So you made it out to the munch. You made it through the vetting process. Now you're at the play party. But how are you supposed to act in this totally alien environment? I mean, what is expected of you? What should you expect of other people? It's really kind of confusing. Well, don't worry. I have 10 really simple guidelines for play party etiquette that should basically apply to pretty much any play party you go to. Stick around and you'll find out what those are. Hey guys, it's Morgan with BDSM Relationships and Education. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and that way you can keep up with all the awesome videos that I post every single week. And if you haven't done so already, please make sure you check out my website. I've got lots of free information there. And if you're looking for something a little more in depth, I do have a brand new book out. It's called The Art of Classic Discipline. And it's available on Amazon. So I'll have links for all of that. And then you guys can check it out. But today, let's talk about play party etiquette. Because the kink scene has certain rules and expectations of people that may not be the same as, you know, the vanilla world, or if you're coming over from swing culture, it's quite different. So we want to talk about that, and that way you can get to a play party, you can have a lot of fun, but you know what is expected of you. So these guidelines are in no particular order. I'm not listing them from like most important to least important because I think they're all important. I've tried to narrow it down as best I can to 10 items because I figure that should be easy enough to remember, because I know it can be really overwhelming, especially when you're in this whole new environment. Like I said, it can be totally alien. You walk in and there's like some music going, and there's people, you know, in leather, and some of them are naked and they're hitting each other, and there may be some sex going on and all kinds of stuff, right? It can be really overwhelming. So I figured 10 simple rules, and you should be able to survive and make a good impression with those. So my first one is don't assume titles or roles ever. People will surprise you. So you can't make assumptions about anybody, and those assumptions should not be based on gender, because, I mean, doms can be of any gender, subs can be of any gender, you know, sadists, masochists, tops, bottoms, whatever. They can be of any gender. So it's really important not to make assumptions there. And you also don't want to assume titles of people either. So because, you know, maybe you've heard of me before and you know that I'm a dominant, but if you come up to me and say, oh, excuse me, Mistress Morgan, I'm going to be really kind of pissed off because I don't like being called mistress generally. You know, it bothers me. And I especially don't like being called mistress by people that I have absolutely no, you know, relationship with. You know, my boyfriend gets to use a title for me, but, you know, random people that I don't know, I hate it when they use titles. And I'm not alone in that. A lot of people are the same, where we just don't like having titles used. Or even if you do use a title and they don't mind it, you might pick the wrong one. So it's just better not to do it at all. It kind of assumes that there's a relationship between you, right? Because if you start calling me mistress, it's like, oh, what, do you expect me to like start ordering you around or something? Like, we don't have a relationship. I don't know your name, so don't call me mistress. So, I mean, obviously there's always going to be the odd person who does like being called, you know, by a title, and that's fine. They will let you know, and if you feel comfortable using that title for them, then go for it. If not, then you don't have to, because you also don't have to talk to them, right? Nobody can force you to do anything. Of course, the easiest way is if there are name tags, just use the name on the name tag, or use the name that they introduced you, they've used to introduce themselves. So if you meet me, I'm like, hey, I'm Morgan, you know, and that's what I expect people to call me, Morgan. Really easy. You know, but if they introduce themselves with some like big grandiose title, well, like I said, you can choose whether you want to use that title, whether you want to see if you can get away with just using their name, or whether you even want to talk to them at all. It's up to you. So my second piece of advice is that submissives and slaves are not communal property. If you are a dominant and you walk into a party, you don't get to order all of the submissives and slaves around. That is not the way it works at all. And if you are a submissive or a slave, You don't have to listen to anybody except your own dominant or master or whatever. So if I walk into a party and I see somebody that is, wearing a collar and I can assume is a submissive, I'm not going to look at them and say, oh, go get me a bottle of water and expect them to do it. I expect them to tell me to go fuck myself because, well, that would be the appropriate response. Unless, of course, they happen to be somebody that I am in a DS relationship with. Now, that works the other way too, right? Not all dominants are everybody's dominant. In fact, none of us are everybody's dominant. So don't because I've literally had this happen, okay? I'm saying it because it has happened. Do not walk up to a random person at a party, especially if you don't know them, and throw yourself on the ground and start kissing their shoes. Please, seriously, don't do that. It's happened a couple of times over the years at various parties to me. So don't. Don't randomly kneel and start worshiping people. Don't, again, start calling them titles or whatever. They're not your dominant. Unless you already have a DS relationship or an arrangement to play or whatever, they are not your dominant. So they are not going to be giving you orders. And they're not going to be appreciating, your saliva all over their shoes. Not cool. Some parties, of course, will have different rules. There are more formal parties, higher protocol parties where all the dominants are sort of get to give orders to all the submissives or stuff like that. And even at those types of parties, usually there is a little more to it than just that. There will be an opt-in method where, the submissives can wear different colored bands to indicate, whether they will obey orders, whether they will, you need to negotiate first, or whether they're just not interested. And obviously, they don't have to obey every order that's given to them, because if I order them to go and jump off the roof, I would really hope they would refuse to do that. So, I mean, within reason, obviously, but check first. And again, that is usually more high protocol, formal type parties that you will find those types of rules at. But it's always good to check. Number 3, please don't assume people's genders. Within the community, and I will post up here and in the description box my video about the the genders that we will encounter within the BDSM community. You just don't make assumptions about people's gender. And I mean, this is not just play parties. This is everywhere. You really just shouldn't make assumptions. If you are unsure about a person's gender, it's not a big deal to say, oh, excuse me, what are your pronouns, or what pronouns do you prefer? I mean, it's usually fairly easy. I mean, if somebody introduces themselves with a feminine name, chances are you can use feminine pronouns. Same with masculine names and masculine pronouns. But of course, someone like me who has a sort of gender neutral name, it's a little harder to tell. Obviously, I've had many times where I show up and people are like, oh, I was expecting a man, because, they've heard of Morgan Freeman or whatever. So that happens, and I'm sure that happens to all the other female Morgans out there. And it probably also happens to the male Morgans where someone was expecting a woman. So, hey. But anyways, don't assume people's genders, and just ask. I mean, asking, hey, what are your pronouns? It's so simple. Never, ever, 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 ever touch anybody without permission. I should have made that the most important rule, really. I shouldn't have that kind of hidden in the middle here. That should just be the most important one. Don't do it, ever. So this means you need to ask permission. You can't just walk up to them and give them a shoulder rub. Don't do that. I've had that happen a lot in swing circles, because I think that is okay within swinger culture, where, they can kind of do that as a way of flirting. And then it's like, no. And so it creeps me out when I go to those kind of parties, because it happens so much. And I'm just like, I hate being touched. And then somebody does that, and it puts me off. But I also understand that this is part of somebody else's culture that I'm, and I'm the tourist in their world, basically. But don't, within the BDSM community, it is never cool to touch anybody without explicit permission. So if you want to give them a hug, ask. If you want to whatever, ask. It's very important. Sometimes they will tell you to ask their dominant if they happen to be submissive in high protocol situations. And some people just have a higher protocol relationship in general. So if I see some friends and I'm like, oh, can I give you a hug? Sometimes I know to address that to the dominant partner. Oh, can I give them a hug? And you kind of learn. But, if you ask somebody like, oh, may I, give you a hug, or can I do this or whatever, sometimes you may hear, oh, just ask my dominant. That'll happen sometimes. That's okay. Now, again, with that, if you don't feel comfortable asking the dominant for permission to hug someone else or whatever, you don't have to, right? You don't have to give the person a hug. You don't have to ask their dominant. It's okay. It's whatever you're comfortable with. Something else that's sort of along the same lines, and this one drives me crazy. Don't ever touch people's collars. Like, seriously, don't. Especially if they're wearing it. An old boyfriend of mine, I bought him this really nice collar. We used to do a lot of not puppy play, but dog play. And so this was a specific training collar for attack dogs. So it was a big, thick, heavy collar, and it had a big handle on it. And we loved it. It was great for play. But people would, because the comfortable way to wear it was that the sort of leather handle would be more towards the back, and people would come up and just grab it on him, and he's being pulled back and it's choking him, whatever. And I couldn't believe that people would do this, right? Somebody even did it to him on the stairs when we were. Now this was at a fetish night, so you get a bunch of tourists in there, but which is a club party. But I couldn't believe it. So don't ever touch people's collars. Not only because you can choke them, but because collars are a really intimate thing. It's like this is a symbol of the relationship. For some people, for others, a collar is just a collar. But it can be a symbol of their relationship. It can be really, really, really intimate. So you don't want to go and touch that. You can admire their collar. You can ask if you can touch it. People shouldn't hold that against you, and they, just accept no, thank you, or yes, or whatever. But don't touch their collar. Not cool. Also, don't touch people's toys without asking. Toys are not a communal thing. I've run into some people that just don't seem to get this. I've been playing at a party, and when I play at a party, I'll have okay, we're playing on the cross, and here next to the cross, I will, put out my little case, and I'll put my toys on top of it so that I can, pick up what I need. Often there'll be a little table or whatever close by so you can put your stuff out. It's a common sort of thing. But I've been at a party where I put my things out and I started warming up my partner, and then I noticed somebody grabbing one of my floggers, and I'm like, what the hell? And they're like, oh, I need to use this. And I'm like, no, you don't need to use them. They're mine. They're my toys. Don't touch my toys. And they didn't understand the concept that the things that I brought with me to the party and pulled out of my bag were my toys, not some communal thing. And they thought they could just use whatever toys happened to be in the dungeon. That the moment we walked through the doors, everything became communal property or something. Needless to say, those people didn't last long because they were so obnoxious about. If somebody grabbed it and then I explained that, no, this is my property, you can't touch it, and they were like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. That's one thing, right? But they were really arrogant about it, so they didn't last long. But anyways, don't touch people's toys without asking. And if they say you can touch their toys, then touch their toys, but don't pick it up and hit somebody with it or whatever. A lot of toys, are fluid bonded or whatever. Horsehair floggers come to mind off the top of my head. Horsehair is barbed, so it's really, really hard to clean to the point that I don't really think you can clean it properly. So if you use it on one person, you really shouldn't use it on another person. And I've seen people pick up, a horsehair flogger and then turn around and hit their partner with it, and then sometimes I've seen people hit them in the genitals, and it's like, that's not your toy, and why would you do that, So don't touch toys without permission. Even if you have permission to touch the toy, you don't have permission to use it. You can always ask for permission to use it, again, whatever works, but you have to respect the owner of the toys. And obviously this goes for their submissives as well. nobody gets to touch my boy in a, I mean, they can hug him or whatever, but if they want to play with him, they have to talk to me. And we don't really, he doesn't play with other people, so that's his boundary. Don't get sloppy drunk, right? I mean, sloppy drunk is not cool pretty much wherever you go outside of a frat party. But within the BDSM scene, a lot of us separate play from drinking. A lot of us just aren't drinkers. So if you aren't a drinker, this is a really good community to be a part of. And I don't mean just booze, drinking. Like, I'm going to talk about substances in general. But I know that in some places there's questions of legality. Like, I live in Canada, so we're going to legalize pot soon. But I know that not everywhere is it legal, and not everywhere for recreational use. But generally, we want to separate these two things. We don't want to be intoxicated while we play. And I mean, if you want to do that at home and play while intoxicated, like your business is your business, it is not something that I would engage in, because I do think that we need to be like really sharp and on our game, basically. So it's not something that I would do. But I'm not you guys. Everybody has different risk tolerances. So if that's something that you enjoy doing, like, I'm gonna just leave it at that. But when you are in public at parties, it's really important to make sure that you kind of keep those things separate. So what a lot of people will do is they will play earlier in the evening and then have a drink later on. A lot of parties are dry or BYOB anyways, because they're happening in unlicensed places, right? So it's someone's house or like a commercial dungeon. They're not licensed for selling booze anyways. So unless you bring something, you can't really drink anyways. But just, yeah, don't be a lush. And if you're going to drink and be at the party, then play first and drink after. Number 8 is don't out people. This is a really, really important rule, not just for play parties, but for the kink scene in general. We do not out people. We don't say like that this person is kinky, and we don't bring our vanilla life into kink world either. So if you know somebody in the vanilla world, don't go on about it, right? Like if you work together or whatever, I mean, unless they're okay with you talking about it, don't. And if you know their legal name, and I'm gonna, like, I talked about this in the vetting video, how people like spread my former legal name around, which really annoyed the shit out of me. But if you know their legal name and they choose to use a different name within the BDSM scene, then use that other name. Don't use their legal name, because they don't want that information getting out for whatever reason. And the fact that they don't want it to happen is a good enough thing in and of itself. They don't need to have any kind of like specific reason for it. It's just what they want. We need to respect that. And don't bring up kink in vanilla settings, right? So if you have people within your community where you have that crossover, I mean, it's always good to just sit down and have a little chat and be like, hey, look, like we know each other, what are going to be our ground rules here? Number 9 is don't bring a camera in and don't take pictures, in general, in the play party. Now, I mean, cameras, I don't think anyone really, I mean, unless you're take a nice like DSLR or something, people don't bring cameras around anymore, like the little point and shoot guys. But everyone has a camera on their cell phone. So you are going to inadvertently bring your camera to the party because you bring your phone, but you can't just pull it out and take pictures wherever you want. A lot of parties will not allow it. They won't allow you to take your cell phone out in the kink area. They'll have like a separate area where cell phones are okay to use. And so that you have to go there to even use it. Like, if there's an emergency call, you have to go to that area to answer the call. But don't take pictures. If you really, really want to take a picture, ask the DM, so the dungeon monitor, who is there at the party to ensure that everything goes smoothly. You can ask them. They may say, sorry, no pictures allowed. Or they may say, okay, you guys can take a picture over here by the wall, and I'll just make sure that nobody walks into the frame. And because you have to be aware of who's behind you in the background, right? So usually you're not allowed to take any kind of photos within a play party at all. You will have to go outside to take a picture, but even then you do need to make sure you don't accidentally have people in the background or whatever, because some people don't want their face posted on FetLife, or they don't want their, dressed up in leather on Facebook or whatever, right? So we need to respect that. It goes back to the not outing people thing. Hey guys, so for some reason the camera or my computer or whatever decided to cut off the last tip for play party etiquette. So here I am on a different day in different clothes, with different makeup to give you the final, bit of advice that I have for play party etiquette. So if you make a mistake, apologize and do what you need to do to correct that mistake, whether it's just paying a bit more attention to how you address people, or making sure that you are not in the way of somebody else's scene or anything like that. But just do what you need to correct the mistake and then move on. And if you are unsure about what sort of etiquette that you have violated or what you need to do to sort of make it up, then ask people. People are generally really forgiving of honest mistakes. Now, the key here is honest mistakes. So we all know those people that, will touch you without your permission. And then if you call them on it, they're like, oh, I'm sorry, it was a mistake. But then 5 minutes later, they're doing it again. And we all know that it's not a mistake. But if it is a genuine mistake, if it is something where someone is new and they've made a mistake, or they don't have to be new necessarily, people make mistakes, it happens. But the important thing is taking responsibility for those mistakes, apologizing, doing what you need to do the work to correct the mistake. So again, I don't know if that is going to be, something specific that you need to do to make it up to a person, or whether it's simply some, introspection or education that you need to do for yourself. The other thing I just want to throw in there is don't expect other people to educate you. So if somebody, gives you a hard time about a certain point of etiquette, it is your responsibility to go and look up how to fix this. You can ask, but if they don't want to sit there and explain to you in the moment or later on, then that is their prerogative. They don't have to do that. You shouldn't expect it of other people. You will need to do your own research sometimes. So whether that is, again, looking things up on the internet, talking to other friends that are more experienced within the kink community, hell, you can come on to my channel and ask me a question. I love answering your kinky questions. It's absolutely fine, but just, take it upon yourself to learn and don't expect others to teach you all the time. And I'm also a big fan of erring on the side of caution. So that means that I'm not going to just assume that I can do something. I'm going to ask first. I'm not going to assume any of the rules. I'm going to make sure that I'm actually totally clear on it. And if I'm not totally clear on it, I'm not going to do it. So that, to me, is really important. So anyways, I wanted to say thank you very much for checking out this video that is sort of filmed in 2 parts, just because we lost the last piece of advice, and that kind of sucks. Anyways, if you are getting out to some private play parties, I think that this is invaluable advice, and it'll help you fit into the culture and help you avoid making mistakes and pissing people off. Nobody wants to do that when they're new. So, and I mean, no one wants to piss people off at any point, I would hope, but you never know. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching this. Thank you to those of you who have supported me through Patreon. I really very much appreciate it. And if you guys want to support through Patreon as well, there will be a link on this screen somewhere. I try to move around the links sometimes. Woo! But anyways, I'll stop being silly now, and you guys can go and check out either the next video or my Patreon or my website or whatever works for you. So I'll see you guys in the next video.